Hello and welcome back to Garrick's Lorcana Lair. Today is a very special video. I am convening the Council of Ruby Amethyst to talk all about the set 8 Reign of Jafar release. We're really excited about the cards that are upcoming for this set. So I talk with Kurt Spice, Rudrose, and Elrathion about the upcoming set and how we feel about Ruby Amethyst moving forward. I would like to give a quick note here and apologize for my mic quality in this video. I don't know what happened with my OBS, but it was detecting my webcam's mic instead of like my good one. So I do apologize for that. It is what it is, unfortunately, but hopefully you still enjoy the video. And with all that being said, let's give it to Garrick from an hour ago and he'll introduce everybody. Today I've assembled 4 members of the Council of Ruby Amethyst. 3 of them are my guests. You, of course, know me, Garrick, here in the Lorcana Lair. I have Elrathion here with me in today's episode. You've seen him before. He is well known in the Ruby Amethyst community, always brewing up some fun stuff, and was one of the creators of the Ruby Amethyst burn deck that earned a golden Mickey. He's been playing Ruby Amethyst for a long time. Elrathion, how are you?
I'm very excited to be here. We
Yeah.
finally have something to discuss.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really excited to get into these cards. I also have Rudrose, who is an OG of Ruby Amethyst, been playing a ton of it in set champs and has been cleaning everybody out, winning every single one that you've done thus far. Is that right? Or how many have
That's
you won
correct.
so far?
Yeah, I'm on a three-peat right now. I've got 3 back to back to back.
Yeah, call him Prime Michael Jordan. Let's see if he does a little retirement and goes for another 3 in a row. And I also have Kurt Spice with me today. He qualified for North American Championships with Ruby Amethyst and is one of the original players of the deck and one of the most well-known players of Ruby Amethyst. Kurt, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I definitely played a lot of Ruby Amethyst, although I would say in the last few sets I've ended up playing a different deck or something like that. But hearing Rudro's recent success, it sounds like I'm messing up. I also
Yeah.
didn't play it at NAC, and that's the deck that won. So it sounds like a me problem more than a red-purple problem. So happy to be on here.
Yes, sir. It sounds like Kurt is coming back. And today I've assembled these amazing players to talk all about the Ruby Amethyst cards that have been revealed for Reign of Jafar. We've got some great ones, we've got some other ones, and we've got some spicy ones that we want to talk about. Is the deck going to change that much? What are our favorite cards? What are some cards we think might work best in a post-rotation kind of world? But let's just get right into it. I want to talk about the Ruby Amethyst Dual Ink cards right off of the jump. So we've gotten a few for the new set. We've gotten the Madame Medusa 3-drop. We've got the Hades 7-drop. We've got the Madame Mim Rhino, the 6/5 that can shift on turn 2. And we've got the Mother Gothel, the 1/3. I gotta say, I really like Hades and Madame Medusa a lot. I think those 2 cards have a ton of potential. But I was hearing Wonderland talk about Mother Gothel and saying it's one of his favorite cards from the set. How do you guys feel about these dual links?
I would say that similar to Garrick, I think of the dual ink cards, Hades is the one that excites me the most. I think that that is probably the card that excites most red purple players the most is like, ooh, this is something kind of new. So it's very reminiscent of Hiram Flabbersham as far as the on play and win quest draw two. And he was so good he got banned. So
Yeah.
that's certainly something to look at. Now Hades costs more, which is mostly a downside, but one thing Hades does that the deck doesn't really play many of right now is a Singer Be Prepared. And boy, does Hades put your opponent in a bind when you play them, dude, on turn 7, because you're going to draw 2 cards off of it. Next turn, they either have to deal with the Hades or you can threaten another draw 2. And if they try to one-up you on the board, you can just sing a B prep and do a lot of good stuff. So, I mean, he seems super impressive. Yeah, and the Mother Gothel is really interesting. I couldn't really figure out how to use her.
Yeah, I really like the look of Hades. I'm wondering if I can combo this card with the Maleficent from the Into the Inklands. So you play the Hades after, and then you quest with her. You essentially deal 4 and draw 2. I don't know if that's too cute, but I definitely agree on your estimation of Hades. Rudrose, how do you feel about the Hades? Is that something you're excited to start testing?
I was really high on it when I first saw it because clearly the payoff is there, right? 2 cards, that's a lot. But the more time has gone on, the more I've thought about it, my opinion has gone down and down and down. And the main reason being this deck already draws so many cards. Like you have so many cards in hand. And so I was starting to think, wait a minute, do I want to wait till turn 7 and then I have to take another character potentially off the board entirely to then draw even more cards? Like I understand the combo. I like the idea. Oh, okay. I drop Hades. I put 2 on my own Cusco. The Cusco gets banished. He draws. Hades draws me 2 more. And that's great. But I've had no issue drawing with this deck also by just bouncing rabbits and genies and Cuscos and Diablos. And so now I have to wait till turn 7. Some of these games are over by turn 5. If I'm playing against I might not in turn 7, I need to be dropping Be Prepared. So I don't know. Like the more I think what bugs me is every single Duel Link in Ruby Amethyst has a condition tied to it where you have to have another character to damage, or even the Taka, you have to have this exert effect. It's like
Yeah.
I just wanted one generic, like, nope, it's just good, and you just play it, and you don't need, to jump through all these hoops. So as always, I would love to be wrong about these, but the more I think about the Duel Links in Ruby Amethyst, the lower and lower I get on them.
I think it's gonna be dependent on the speed of the meta, right? Like, obviously, I think if we're kind of in a slower environment, this card could be insane, right? But if it's gonna be like just a bunch of steel song, a bunch of green steel discard, a bunch of like purple steel aggro, etc., then I mean, last set there was a long period where I mean, in fact, still the case that like a lot of Ruby Amethyst players decided to not even run rabbits and um just thought like Genie plus maybe have an opportunity to find their keepers. They found that like the bounce package was too slow, a lot of players, and so like a 7-cost card that is an inkable, like if you play against this card and you draw these at the wrong time, you're like it's a very sad day. But slow meta, awesome card.
Yeah, I think the upside for this card is absolutely insane. Kurt laid it out pretty much word for word, right? The amount of advantage that you can gain from this card, and then potentially use it to its full effect to sing a Be Prepared. I think that is something that we have been missing. But we're talking about, like Rudrose brought up, a color combination that they've really been trying to hammer home as a self-inflict damage to deal damage to something else. That was what we got in the last set with the Ruby Amethyst cards. That's what we're getting with this set. And even a lot of the Ruby cards are starting to do that a lot more, rather than outright banish things like Tremaine or Medusa or Brawl or Sisu, right?
Mhm.
So we're getting more conditions. And with that in mind, I feel like maybe we have to build around these conditions a bit more. Like, is there enough to explore with this sort of dealing damage type stuff? Like, I feel like I take a look at the 3/3 Madame Medusa, and this card just looks really, really good. Especially if you play a queen on turn 2, or you have like Palace Guard out, or Minnie Mouse, or Pain, or Olaf. Take your choice of the 1/3.
No, she's not bad, right? I'm not as high on her as some other people. I mean, I think there's a fair bit of competition in the 3 slot already. I know a lot of people have deviated from good old Sisu, but I'm still a big fan. Like if you go with the evasive variant, like your 3 slot, like you want to have probably 3 to 4 Peter Pans. Probably want to have 3 to 4 crabs. Of course, maybe if the meta shifts, maybe you don't need as many crabs, but um, typically you do, and that's already pretty congested right there. Then if you like have a traditional deck, you have Sisu, you have another 3 drop, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. That looks very tasty to me. And so Medusa and that rank order strikes me as like option 2 or 3 rather than option 1. And I could be completely wrong about that, but that's how I feel right now.
No, I think Elrathion hit the nail on the head with that. Like looking at my deck, My 3 slots are Sisu, like he said, fantastic stats.
Mhm.
Peter Pan, very good against Diablo, and of course you're running 4 if you're running the evasive version. Crab, who at his worst is just a 3/3 body, but is very impactful with all the bouncing. And then Fox, one of the best cards in the game. Do I want to get rid of any of those for a card that on its own does nothing, potentially hurts my own board, and then even if, let's say its best scenario is I hurt my own Cusco, I draw a card, and I bounce their Daisy. It just bounces it. They could just replay the Daisy on the next turn or replay the Aerial. I don't want them to get another look at Aerial. Like, I don't know, man. Like when you just start stacking conditions on conditions on conditions, it takes away for me what is one of the great strengths of Ruby Amethyst is that it's so consistent. And a lot of these cards read as much less consistent.
And maybe just one more argument for Kurt's jumps in, but I think the other thing that I have a little bit of challenge with is that frankly, if I look at my stats with Ruby Amethyst, I don't have a lot of problems on the play. Like I'm usually beating most people on the play consistently. I want to buttress my on the draw. And she's significantly worse on the draw, which I think is a problem. Plus, like it requires you probably for her to be really good, like you probably want to play cards which you don't really love to play. Like, you know, I know that there's the Ruby Amethyst players out there that really hate Steel Song so much that like they love to populate their deck with 8/1/3s. I am not one of those. I just don't like to like nerf myself that much just to have a slightly more favorite matchup against the curse of the world. But you know, I prefer to have more cards that make me better on the draw.
I mean, I felt like my list particularly has been playing a lot of this already self-inflicted damage to take advantage of the queen. So I'm playing 1/3, I'm playing Pain, I'm playing the queen, and I'm playing Teeth and Ambitions.
Ooh.
I feel like I kind of like this card on the draw. If you have queen out, I feel like it could be a really really high tempo play to make you consistently better on the draw.
Queen is clearly like the best target for all of these self-damaging cards that
Yeah.
you can turn it on yourself. You don't have to wait for them to turn her on with, a Storm Rage on or something like that. So Queen is like the ideal candidate. You want to be running with these.
Yeah, I mean, in one of my set champs, I was playing against an Amber Steel like mid-range-ish version. It was a weird deck, but I used Teeth and Ambitions to clear the piglet that they had out, and then I challenged the Daisy with my queen and just blew them out. I feel like that's like the huge strength of these self-inflicted damage cards. But Kurt, what are your thoughts on the Madame Medusa?
She reminds me just like as a card, a lot of Cloud Kicker, as far as like how she affects the board, right? She's just like 3 cost something something that bounces a 2 or less. In her case now it's 2 cost instead of 2 strength, as opposed to Kit. And then if you kind of just look at the goals of what Ruby Amethyst wants to do, it more wants to, in those early trading scenarios, take your opponent's card, whether that's a brawl, a fox, or a crab challenge. You're pretty much trying to take their card because your goal is ultimately going to be to run them out of cards first. Not every game, there's plenty of matchups where you go aggro, of course, and everything. But I think that in the matchups where you want the early interaction, you really want to destroy their card more than just bounce into their hand. Now that said, she is a good damage enabler if that's like what you're in the market for, because her effect is like, if that's what you're trying to do, then her effect and her stats and everything are pretty solid for what the color options are for something that just directly puts the damage on. And then the bounce at that point becomes good because it's just like, an effect of what you're already trying to do. And I think if you want to do that, you have to lean more into cards. There's a new card that I like called Everybody's Got a Weakness
Yeah.
that says 4 cost action with inkable, and it says move up to 1 damage from any number of your characters onto one of your opponent's characters, then draw a card for each damage counter moved. So in order to build this up, you're only going to be able to draw a maximum of 1 card per character. So you really got to go wide with it. But I think that a Ruby Amethyst deck playing more of Merlin rabbits and 1/3s for 1 and like bigger willpower early characters, because you know that you're going to try to stack damage on these characters, I think once you start to kind of build your deck towards that, the effects that are putting damage actively on them, especially something as versatile as bounce any 2-cost anything, that starts to get more attractive as an opinion, I think. So it doesn't really fit into the current Ruby Amethyst mold, but perhaps creates its new mold.
I totally agree. And I think where we're really going to see these cards shine is when we lose a lot of like the insanely powerful things that we do now.
Yeah.
Like basically every card they gave us from set 1 to 4, which are basically the entire deck that we still play. Now, of course, we play Shark and Genie, but like everything else is just so powerful from those sets. As far as the Madam Mim Rhino, I feel like this card would be really, really hard to make work, even in post rotation. I feel the same way about Mother Gothel, but like I said, Wonderland was super high on it, so maybe I'm not seeing it. Do you guys have any specific comments on either of those two Duel Link cards?
He was high on the Rhino?
No, you
Or the Mother Gothel.
Gothel. Yeah.
Okay. So the
Gothel.
Rhino too is that so clearly they want you to shift it in, right? Because if you wait till turn 6 to play this, it's just it's a worse Maui without rush.
Right.
But there is no Madam Mim 1 cost. So the cheapest Madam Mim is the snake, and then the tiny adversary one for 2. But then if you shift this on 3, you have to have another character for her to bounce, or she just banishes herself. So like, I don't even know how soon you'd be able to get this Rhino out. Like the Rhino, I can't believe that card's uninkable.
Yeah, I agree. The uninkability is kind of wild.
If she was inkable, I would seriously consider her. You know, I don't think I mean having a 6/5 turn 3 is not the worst thing in the world, but you know, and maybe your shift options are going to deplete so much that we get desperate.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But
Next
I mean, our
template
bounce
turn
options rather, but you know, but yeah, I don't know why this card is uninkable.
I guess another big problem with it is she costs 6, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And she shifts for 2. So really the best use that you could figure out, I think, with this would be to sing a song because of the upgrade you get with cost for your ink that you put into it. And there's not really like a singing style deck. This is like kind of like the first. There's maybe some other random shifts along the way, but here's like one of the first one. It's like 2 for 6. That's like a huge bump in Ruby Amethyst, but it's not 7, so it's not Be Prepared. And then
I can start
it's
it
an
right,
April Get
baby.
Together song, except that you have to return another character. So you have to have another singer and a bouncer and a that. It's like probably too many hoops to jump through, and it's uninkable.
Yeah.
If you didn't have to jump through 3 hoops already, you can't even ink the card. What?
Yeah. You could sing Speaking Undisputed on turn 2. Let's go.
You let me know
Hey,
the
that
scenario that works in, and I'll confirm.
just ignore that card is also uninkable, and if your
Yeah.
opponent has 2 cards out, is completely useless. That
I mean, if we had a 1-cost Mim that was inkable, you know, maybe.
yeah,
I think it's fair to move on from
But
her.
we don't.
yeah, for sure. And then the Mother Gothel. I mean, anyone have any strong feelings about that? I
Again, oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, well, it's like you drop this on 2, right? So you have to target a character that is going to survive it. So you have to be playing Minnie Mouse or the new Palace Guard. Like you have to have something with enough willpower so that when she puts the damage on it, it survives. And the Queen is on 2, so I guess you could put the Queen on 2, drop the Gothel on 3. And I kind of like the idea that you power it up a little bit. Maybe the Queen becomes a 5 challenger. She runs in, she hits him, and then comes back to her hand. The problem being if it's a card that doesn't have rush and barely any of, and I don't know if any of those 1-costers have rush, you then have to play the card again, let it sit a whole turn. Like again, you want me to jump through hoops, and the more hoops you want me to jump through, the more I cling tighter to the Ruby Amethyst I have that go, no, I just want to use these. These work.
Yeah, I would love it if it was 1 damage or gave like Challenger 2. That way I could use it on my Cusco, and then
Yeah.
I don't know. 1 Challenger seems really like a really, really tough ask in a
Yeah.
grab economy, right?
And another uninkable.
A 2-cost uninkable is not the end of the world. Like
True.
the uninkables that are like high cost, those are the problem. Like the low cost ones, you can kind of deal with, right?
Speaking of low-cost uninkables, I am really excited by this card. Maybe I'm completely out of my mind, but I absolutely love this Prince John, this rare 5/5 for 3. Now, we do have Sisu. She is inkable. She does quest, but this guy does the self damage and he makes the card that Kurt mentioned earlier, I think, a little bit more consistent. Everybody's got a weakness. You could potentially combo this guy with Tinkerbell, which I think is another interesting Ruby card, sort of like Flynn. But gains you the lore instantly. You could play her and something else and just gain the lore automatically. Could be like a goat type situation. I feel like the Prince John has a lot of versatility, and he also can't be negatively affected by your opponent dumping their hand, for instance, which, Ruby Sapphire has done against us a lot, where they're like, all right, I'll just ink everything in my hand and then brawl your Sisu. Do we like Prince John? Do we hate Prince John? Is he okay?
Yeah, I think he's fun again in kind of this alternative build of Ruby Amethyst. Like, I don't think I would just jam him into my quote unquote classic version of it.
Yeah.
But if you're going in on this damage, and Kurt had brought up this card earlier, you just mentioned it, that everyone's got a weakness. I like how he feeds into that. It kind of reminds me of Mother Gothel Rapunzel, that combo. Not quite the same, of course, but at least. So if you're going for that style, I actually think he's kind of fun. But if you're doing the classic, like you said, isn't it better to just have Sisu? Probably.
I pretty much agree with everything said as far as how Prince John fits into that damage Ruby Amethyst strategy. And then I actually had the Tinkerbell written down as a card that I thought was very interesting for Ruby Amethyst as far as the style of deck it goes. It is.
Yeah.
I played in set 4, and where that was the set that Flint came out, and that was like a new dimension for Ruby Amethyst at the time. It didn't really have like a very aggressive start, but now all of a sudden you could go 1 cost, Flynn, Sisu, Queen's Castle, and it's like you're, you win before you need to be prepared. And so I think that as new sets come out, more strategy opening cards are going to come out for Ruby Amethyst rather than like good additions to the existing version of it. And so Tinkerbell is kind of like in that same boat of like a new version of Ruby Amethyst. But it's a shame that it doesn't work with some of its best cards. Like it'd be really nice if you could like play a crab and target itself and exert it to gain the ink, but it has to actually have all the strength up front for it to even go in the bag. So she doesn't quite work with that. Obviously works with both Mauis, and you don't really mind exerting either one if you're gaining 2 lore off of it. You're probably doing so in a matchup that you don't need the immediate challenge. But at the same time, the Tinkerbell doesn't work well in the damage hold Ruby Amethyst deck because she's only 1/1 evasive. And evasives have been getting a little bit harder to keep on the board. So that was kind of my thoughts on her as well. And I do like the Prince John as a card in general for all the reasons mentioned.
I like her a lot. She offers up a lot of flexibility. There's so many different lines. I mean, you could like for instance, like in the old Flynn Sisu lineups, if you didn't draw Flynn, like you were significantly weaker. And so to be able to buttress the probability of you getting the 2-drop, right? And so I don't know if 8 is the right number, but like you could potentially go that wild to secure having a very high damage curve against very greedy decks. But you could also just completely like play her by herself, or she could also become kind of like, we all remember like the good old days of set 4, where the strategy of Ruby Amethyst was pretty much like, draw a bunch of cards and then just hit them at the checkmate, and the checkmate could be like double castle, it could be like triple goats, it could be any number. I remember the Luca video like against Rose tournament where he like, it was like 8 or 9 montages of every time, like, triple goat, double castle, whatever, like the kind of like, okay, you're dead moments. And I feel Tinkerbell is another one of those like that you could just hold in the hands, right? And you build and you gradually like grind up some lore, right? And then eventually you just show them the business and you like hit him with 4 or 6 lore and like, okay, it's good game out of nowhere from your hand. And I think that It really excites me to see how could I build a deck around that furthers, with that concept in mind.
She's fun. Actually, Elrathion just really sold me on her just talking about it there. Because again, in like the classic build, if I'm bringing in Maui, it's probably because I need him to challenge something. But in a deck built around her, and I really liked his example that sometimes you see the cost, and I always think, oh well, it's a 2 cost, so it has to be played on turn 2. But I much prefer his version of it. Of actually, you save it for the end game, and then you just boom, 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 drop Prince John, Maui, whatever cards, and suddenly you've just gotten this lore swing out of nowhere. So for that idea, I actually think that's pretty fun.
You would only need 8 ink to do like Tinkerbell, Sisu, John, for
Yeah.
instance, and gain 4 lore, right? Which is like more lore gain than we realistically can get out of any other combo. Like unless we're going to like do like gathering plus whatever, but but it's all inkable, and they're all good cards individually on their own. So that I like that quite a bit.
I'd like to go around and get a card that everybody is excited for the new set. I know we just all talked about Tinkerbell and Kurt brought that up, but do we have other cards that we haven't mentioned yet that we're excited to give a try? Lilo comes to mind for me personally, and we already talked about Prince John, but Elrathion, is there a card that you're eyeing that we haven't discussed yet that you think has high potential?
I think there's a lot of cards that have potential. High potential is a big word. But I ambitious. But I definitely the one drop slot. There's some cards that are playable, but like don't necessarily like super excite me. But at 2 drop, I feel like we've been blessed with like 2 really good 2 drops, and the one that we haven't mentioned, and it's more of like a meta dependent like type of card, but I think Jiminy Cricket is really good as a card. Now, is it going to be good in Ruby Amethyst, or is it going to be good like in the meta that we don't know yet? Maybe, maybe not. But like as an ability, like this can completely destroy certain decks.
Yeah,
And
I think it kind of
so
hoses Blurple, right?
for that alone, I'm like, just it existing, like, because I think we all would agree that like Ruby Amethyst is a Junt, and Ruby Amethyst gets better when we get to attack certain archetypes instead of trying to build for everybody. And so just the fact that we have like a card in the toolbox that attacks some things really well, I'm always happy with. Like it doesn't need to be like good everywhere. Like just give me a card, like give me attack option, right? And I don't need to slate it in, but I'm happy that I have the availability to slate it in.
When playing the traditional Ruby Amethyst deck, a lot of the newer cards coming out are exactly going to be like cards to add to the toolbox. One card that I think could fit into the traditional Ruby Amethyst deck really well is Monstro, the big whale. What is it, a 6/8 with Rush?
Mhm.
And then you can discard a card and ready it, and then he cannot quest. He can quest for 2. I'm pretty much just excited to try this card in every color and everything. I think this card is just bananas as far as like a Lorcana card goes. Just like take this card's value, compare it to like Scar. Yes, you cannot take out Snow White and all the 7 dwarves in the same challenge like you can with Scar, but when realistically what you're actually challenging and taking out, like you're normally taking out 2 characters or a character and a location. So Monstro is doing that, and it's inkable. And then just think a little bit about Monstro singing a song, perhaps a song that draws you more than 1 card, who can then discard to, like, I'm just gonna leave it at that. But like, what this card's insane.
Yeah, I like Monstro. I mean, I was really hyped in the 20 lore Discord, and everyone was telling me this is a Blurple card. But it is a great Blurple card. But I feel like in a slower meta, we get so high
It is
on
an
ink.
Amethyst card. There's a
Yeah.
good combo with him in every color.
I mean, we get so high on ink. Like, in every game, and like you said, Kurt, he's inkable. So like if the match is too
You can
fast
play him on
for him,
turn 3 with Steel Mickey Mouse. You can play him on turn 5 with Return to Hercules. You can zero to hero him. You can Sapphire ramp him. You can just play him for 8 as your grind in the game. Sing a Be Prepared with him. It's what a strong card Monstro is.
Mhm.
I'm a Monstro fan for sure.
And finally, we have like a 7+ card that's inkable. That's like worthy to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Like if he wasn't inkable, we would not have nearly the same excitement, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the combo potential, like you mentioned, Kurt, with like friends on the other side as well. Like you can sing that with him and then use those cards to discard if you need to have more cards to discard to potentially challenge with him. Just a lot of really, really cool things you can do, not only in Ruby Amethyst, like Kurt mentioned.
But Garth is really
Go ahead.
secretly interested in doing Purple Steel a whole new world. Just doesn't want to say it. But Jafar, just
That would be pretty
OTK,
fun. Yeah.
just OTK, just keep on. All the world, discard a card, ready. All the world, discard a card, ready. Or just like a long game Zeus, please go to card ready. Long game Zeus, storm. Just you could probably have the most crazy. I know we're Ruby Amethyst cast here, but like you could probably have the most crazy set of like. You could probably like sing 6 songs in a turn with this guy.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think of that with him being like putting Amethyst Steel song on the map more than Jafar has in this set at least. Yeah.
And like
It's
three
crazy.
let the start rate shuffle. Like tap draw cards, tap draw cards, damage, tap draw card. Oh my god! Yeah, I can.
Yeah. And you can use both Steel Mickey Mouses to play him early.
True. Speaking about Mickey Mouse and Steel, I want to get that big Mickey out so bad. Like early, that card looks so fun. Not that it has anything to do with Ruby Amethyst, but it's a 10/10 that when it's banished deals 5 to everything. Seems sick.
Big.
Big Mink.
Yeah, but to steer it back to Ruby Amethyst, another card that I'm excited for that everybody's going to have to look at after I say it is Lafayette. He's a dog, and the reason why I like him is that he was a Disney famous card, which are that was like the test print of Lorcana, and that's how Lorcana was pitched to Ravensburger as, hey, you want to make a Disney game? It was with Disney famous cards, and the Disney famous card Hook's Crew, which was in the first, like, was supposed to be the first set of Lorcana, is finally getting played or printed for the first time as Lafayette the dog.
You just hit us with the lore right here.
The trivia.
Yeah, I'll send the images required to put them on the screen.
Yes, thank you.
Very sportsful reference to Garrick for sure.
I would appreciate that. Kurt's Trivia Corner.
Right?
New series, let's go. No, those Disney
Very
famous cards are
impressed.
sick. Rudrose, is there a card in specific that we haven't talked about that you're interested in?
There is, and actually, I don't see anyone talking about this card. And when
Okay.
I first read it, I was very impressed by it. I would like to try it in my traditional Ruby Amethyst, and it is a 3-cost inkable action called They Never Come Back. Up to 2 chosen characters can't ready at the start of their next turn, and you draw a card. So here are the reasons I like this. One, it's not a song, and sometimes that's a bad thing because you can't sing it, but it also means it can't be sniped by like an Ursula or something like that.
Mhm.
I call it the freeze effect 'cause that's what they called it in Final Fantasy trading card game. But yeah, freezing 2 characters and then it replaces itself. I kind of like that because so against aggro, right? Okay, your Daisy and your Smee can't ready. I just took 4 lore away from you, or even against your singers. Your Cinderella isn't going to sing Storm next turn. Your Ariel isn't going to sing anything. And then against the higher end decks, Ruby Amethyst doesn't really have a clean way to deal with like a Maui Shark. And so I like the idea of saying, actually, because I think how many Ruby Amethyst matches we've seen where, well, I can't quest out because the shark punishes me and then gets back the pirate's life. Well, now, nope, that shark's frozen. I can quest. Yeah, I can't shut off his lore effect. So it just seems very strong to me, especially since it can hit 2 characters. Again, I don't know what you cut for it. I don't know where it fits, but it just seems like it could kind of answer a lot of different big threats in the game at different levels. So I am hoping it is as good in practice as it sounds in my head.
Yeah, I mean, local DMV legend Rob has been playing Lose the Way. It's similar to that, costs 1 more, but it's it hits 2 characters and draws a card. It's not the same exact effect because Lose the Way exerts them, and then you discard a card to prevent them from readying. But if they're already exerted, you hit 2, you draw a card. I could see it for sure.
Yeah, and I think too, a card like that would really excel in a deck that is not really trying to banish your opponent's characters, but is more just trying to win the game as fast as possible with 20 lore. And if you just freezing 2 characters for the turn, which I think is applicable in Disney, as most of the exert and not ready cards are from Disney Frozen.
That's true.
So, I think that still works from Final Fantasy 2 lore as well. An aggressive deck and one that wants to like gain lore by playing actions and stuff would probably be like the prime candidate as far as when I saw it, because I do think that the effect is unique and powerful for sure. I mean, Elsa 8 cost 8 and does that, so this is on a 3 cost card draw action.
We have one of the builders of the Ruby Amethyst burn deck here with us, Elrathion. Do you like this in that type of shell? Do you see the burn deck coming back to any sort of prominence here with the new cards coming out?
I'm not sure if this card would be the card that like I'm thinking of to be in there, but maybe. But I mean, there's several cards that are really well suited to the burn deck. The Tinkerbell is really well suited. We haven't talked about like Brutus, but Brutus works. There's a lot of like cards that are, give interesting options.
Bambi is out there in the world. I'm not super impressed by Bambi. I think Bambi might be just a bit too slow. If it gets returned, it just seems like it's such negative temp. I don't know if this card's ever questing, I guess is what I'm getting at, and it's a 3 cost uninkable. How do we feel about Bambi? I mean, it's one of the legendaries. It's one of the 4 legendaries that we get every set. Bambi thoughts?
Man, I've been waiting for Amethyst to just get like a generically good legendary. Have we had one since Elsa? Again, a card that you just play it and it just does its thing. And it, like you said, Garrick, if Bambi keeps getting bounced, Bambi essentially is a White Rose at that point, except White Rose has better stats and is inkable. Like, I don't know, maybe there's some crazy world where actually, you bounced it 100 times and I'm gaining lore, but I can't imagine you can spend 3 ink over and over and over again to keep replaying this card. And again, any steel deck, like any kind of song is going to get rid of it. Any red deck with Brawl or Sisu or Medusa is going to like, I don't know. I would love to be wrong on this card because I really like the art, but I just can't see this sticking around for a turn.
If only it was inkable, I'd play it.
I expect Bambi to have board for how fragile he is and everything, and it just gets bounced. But the fact that it's has to deal with that and can also just get pinged off by any steel thing at all, there's just, I think, a little bit too much going against this unfortunate deer. But I'd love to be proven wrong.
We have the Bambi. We talked about Tinkerbell. We also have in the legendary slot the Pinocchio. I
was waiting for him to come up.
Yeah, the 0/4 for 4. Once during your turn, whenever you ready this character, you may draw a card. He also quests for 2. Are we Pinocchio enjoyers out there in the world?
Yeah, I think he's pretty good. I mean, just the fact that like it's an inkable card that has 4 willpower and can quest for 2 and is evasive makes it a strong card. And the fact that you get draw out of it, if you have certain readying effects, you could potentially like quest for 2, ready, draw a card. That seems pretty potent to me. Now, can it compete with all the other 4 slots? Not sure, but the fact that it's inkable makes it to where I'm at least interested in trying it.
I was just gonna say, it reminds me a lot of the Yzma. That's like exert to draw up to 3 cards. And that is just like, if it gets going, it can be this card advantage engine that takes over the game. But that ends up ultimately not being what Amethyst wants, at least from a character. Sometimes you can do it with like a location or something. But he is evasive and has 4 willpower, so Peter Pan kind of giving it rush, for an example. If you can challenge something that's not going to take out your Pinocchio, then you can kind of get a card early that you otherwise wouldn't. But then you still have to ready with it. So any of the issues that you would face with removal, you're not quite getting the immediate value. You're just getting the draw a card turn early if he sticks around. But it's definitely interesting, and all the other like 4-cost draw cards are uninkable. So, having even just like a 2 of extra 4-drop draw a card character could be useful.
Yeah, Genie was the first thing I thought of comparing him to because they've got the same willpower, same cost, same lore gain. They're both evasive. Of course, Genie draws a card immediately. I mean, if he was on quest, I would very much be more into this because it's like, okay, I understand. I wait a whole turn. He doesn't do nothing. But if he survives that turn, he starts paying off. But because it's when he readies, which means unless you have some way to manipulate them, like they mentioned, the rush to immediately exert him, you have to wait till turn 6 to actually draw the card. You play him on 4, he quests on turn 5, and then 6 you finally get the payoff. So if he was on quest, I think I'd like him a way better. But right now, it seems like too many hoops to jump through. But like they said, at least he's inkable, so he gives an actual alternative to Rabbit and Genie cards like that.
Yeah, but I could conceive like if there was a meta where evasives were not very popular and the answers were not very prevalent to them, if you drop this at 4 and they just don't have a good answer, like it could just be a death sentence because it's not only you get lore, but you get card advantage like every turn once it gets going.
Yeah, it could be similar to something like, I guess, Diablo. Not nearly as powerful, obviously. Diablo's insane, but a sort of similar effect where you just have this evasive guy out there and you're like, I need to get rid of this thing. It's drawing too many cards. But he gets 2 lore. Diablo only gets 1. All right, last card I wanted to bring up, and then we can go around if there's anything else you guys want to say. It's the last legendary. I feel like we got to talk about all 4 of the legendaries. We have Lilo destroying the sandcastle there. I think Lilo has a lot of potential. Ruby Amethyst, potential definitely if you're trying something a little bit out there, a little bit wacky. Obviously, she works well with something like Maui Shark, even like the Robin Hood card. But what do you guys think about Lilo in Ruby Amethyst specifically? And then if you want to throw in your opinions on Lilo outside of Ruby Amethyst, where she might shine a little bit better, let me know what you think.
I've seen the power of playing stuff for free, all this set in Arcasia's Island with the Scrooge McDuck, the Tamatoa. So if you're playing this for free, I think it's going to feel absolutely insane. So the big question I then ask is, are you okay paying 5 for this? For a ready, I mean, we do have other cards that do it, but it's a decent body. 4/4, quest for 2. I really like that. I don't know if that goes in Ruby Amethyst. Rarely do we cast enough actions in a turn to play that for free. And again, do I cut Maui for this or what's her name? Elsa? Not that you have to cut from the same slot, but
Yeah.
So I don't know if our deck is going to be the best to use her. I'm sure there's some action deck out there and it's going to keep getting dropped on me for free. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is annoying. And then that shark suddenly challenges twice when I wasn't expecting it. So I wonder if she might be better in red blue versus us. But yeah, I still think the card's quite good.
I think Sapphire does utilize Lilo perhaps a little bit better. One card that I'm really excited to pair with Lilo is Robin Hood Sharpshooter.
Yeah.
Who when he quests, you get to play an action for free off the top 4. And then with the Lilo, you get to, as long as you have 2 other actions to play, you can then play the Lilo for free and ready and protect the Robin Hood. Kind of all of that just works really well with Maui Shark anyways. You get to fill your discard up more with the Sharpshooter. And I think that works really well with Sapphire because it can just like power those things out sooner. Amethyst has a couple good cheap like 1-cost draw cards. There's like the 1-cost song that shuffles some cards back in your opponent's deck and draws a card. So there's a potential, I think, for there to be something with Lilo as long as you have enough actions to make sure that you're playing her for free most of the time. Because even if you don't have the action, she's at least inkable. But yeah, and there's also that Ruby Radigan that you can like game lore for every action. So like if you're in the market for more sharks in that kind of deck, like the possibilities are definitely out there. It's just does the full 60 cards come together like you want it to?
The boss is on a roll. Let's make it happen.
Oh yeah.
One of the cards that I'm surprised hasn't been brought up is like Nothing We Won't Do. Because I've had a couple of Ruby Amethyst players DM me with this card. It's like, oh, this card is busted. What are y'all's thoughts on that one?
That
Well,
is the 8-cost song, correct?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, 8 cost inkable. Ready all your characters for the rest of this turn. They take no damage from challenges and can't quest. I mean,
Man,
obviously, it kind of it immediately gets rid of the downside of singing, right? Is that even if you sing it together, everyone who sang it would just come right back up. So you, in a way, get it for free. That part's pretty good. I feel like I'd want a very specific board state though to take it. But again, if you have a card like Shark, that can sit there and just, I don't know.
Yeah, you can have like an OTK with this, right? Like, if you have like if you have a bunch of like exhausted characters with Maui Sharks, or like there's some other combos out there. I forgot how they work, but I think there's like 2 or 3 combos out there where you can OTK with this if you like if the right circumstances arise. So I think that's also
It's
partially.
it's a little convoluted. You have to shrink your shark enough to not deal any damage, so that way that you can challenge with the shark for 0 and then return the song. You need another singer. Actually, you need 2 singers with the shark because the shark has to challenge to get the action back in the first place. So you need like grandma, grandpa, a shark, the action, sapphire quill, effect times 4. No problemo.
And you just have him re-get the song back and sing it over. That's really funny.
Then you win.
Easy peasy.
Most everyone's mad here. I'm definitely gonna play with. Like I'm gonna try this card out. Um, like the fact that it's kind of a go to Mago type of effect. Um, like that's a lot of lore gain for Ruby decks, and it seems to me like a very strong card. Now, granted, it's 7 and inkable, but it's a strong enough effect to potentially like in a burn type of deck like be worthy of inclusion. Potentially it's even more scary in Ruby Sapphire, but it's or in other colors. But
Yeah.
I think that card's really good. Now the other card that I think has a lot of potential is Forest Duel. Um, you know,
Yeah, that one's cool.
yeah. I'm not sure if it's like Ruby Amethyst per se. Potentially though, like if you have enough of these Cusco and Diablo type of characters, and you're kind of like in a meta where it's kind of like you've been in these metas where it's like a stare meta, like I like to call it, where you just stare at each other and I'm like, are you gonna quest or am I like who's gonna turn the tired card sideways? Like this could potentially be a very high card advantage, like high power move as well.
Force Duel is definitely a really cool card. I think it's like if it was in any other color, it would be definitely played. And because it's an Amethyst card, that's like the only reason why you wouldn't want it in a deck. But I mean, it's Cricky, very close to it, but instead of the body getting left over, you just get to get all your challengers back. So yeah, hard to say exactly what the best use of that is, but definitely a very powerful effect.
Mine is very similar to the one I already mentioned, which is they never came back. But if you want that effect on a body, there's a Bruno Madrigal single minded. What I like about it's just a 4-cost inkable, and it comes in and it freezes something. No conditions, no, it's got to be this cost or less. It has to have this. Just hey, come in, keep something from readying. Boom. So if you want that effect on a body, Bruno's your guy.
I feel that Ruby Amethyst this set was in a pretty good spot. Especially post ban. Pre ban it was a little bit more difficult. Maybe got some legs back. And unlike previous sets, we've gotten quite a bit of cards that are worthy of exploration. Um, so I'm not sure where that takes us, but it's at least fun to be able to have to think for a little bit, as opposed to just being like, oh, okay, like 90% of these cards. The fact that we went an hour uh, on this, if this was like the last 2 or 3 sets, we would have spent like 15 minutes. So I'm excited about that by itself.
I am. This will probably be a very bittersweet set for me because I love Ruby Amethyst, and there's a very good chance this is going to be its last hurrah, and it's going to look very different. in set 9 unless we get a bunch of the reprinted staples. So I'm definitely going to ride with it and ride it to the end. And I always have faith in it. And Ed proved that when he won North America. You know, you can't ever count out the king, is what I say. This deck's been around since set 1 for a good reason. Some of the best card draw with some of the best removal. So I don't know how many of the new cards are going to come in. At least looking at Reign of Jafar, it looks like a pretty underwhelming set to me, but I would love to be wrong about that. And turns out there's a bunch of explosive stuff, unless it's like last set and then it's really annoying. So I'm gonna be playing it, and I hope to find some fun new combos. I would love to try out some new cards and potentially prepare for that post rotation version. See what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rudrose nailed it as far as Ruby Amethyst going forward. You know, can't kill the king, baby. And you know, shout out to my team, World Class Cards. Shout out to my world class comrades in Maryland that play Lorcana with me all the time. And shout out to Walt. Thanks for the Disney stuff, dog.
Yeah, shout outs to the team, Team Luxury. Excited to see some of my friends getting ready for Worlds now that we finally have some information. And yeah, excited for the new set to release and for the new tournaments that are about to release with PPG.
Follow me at Rudrose TCG on YouTube. That's my main channel. You can find me on Twitter there as well. Thank you so much. And I want to give a shout out to Garrick for hosting, as well as my two partners, Kurt as well as Elrathion. So thank you guys. It was a blast.